all of a sudden you realize that you're not the most important thing in your own life anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you are now about to witness
the journey that is the Life Choices podcast.
Yeah!
Do you have how many children?
I have 2 children.
2 children, and their ages?
My daughter just turned 5. My son's 6. He turned 7 in August. So
Okay.
couple weeks.
What was it like becoming a father?
I didn't really know how to be a father. So it's pretty scary. Like when you actually come home, like it's all surreal the first couple of months, but when you bring that baby home the first time, you're kind of like, oh shit, they let me bring this thing home. Like I need an adult, here I am like 35 years old having a kid. And it's just like, it's an undescribable feeling, really. It's like joy, excitement, terrified. You just sit there and look at it. Like we looked at my son and my daughter both. It was like the only thing we did for like a month straight after. It's just like nothing you've ever, all of a sudden you realize that you're not the most important thing in your own life anymore, I guess is the way I would describe that feeling. But it's like a weird growth that has to go on inside of you to get there too. Like even now I still question like what kind of father I am.
Well, because every day what your actions, everything you do and say affects the children, and you don't know how that's going to help them develop into the human they will become.
Exactly. And you want to find that medium of where you're like kind of guiding them properly, but at the same time, you got to also like discipline. It's hard. Like you can't be like their friend, but you want to be their friend. Like you want to give them all the candy and all the cupcakes. But I know that that's not good for them. So it's like, I don't even buy it. It's not even in my house. We try to eat as much real food as possible. But even now with a 5 and a 6-year-old, I still like think about like, how are my children, how do they perceive me? And like, how are they going to, like that's always a question that's going like, are you a good parent? Like you want to be there, but we all have our moments too, where we're like moments of weakness where the frustration kind of like can almost like outweigh, a responsible parenting decision in some situations. Even it's crazy. It really is to think about it all, and becoming a parent was, I love it. I wouldn't take it away for a minute. I love to look at those children and just be like, wow, this is incredible.
I was part of their creation.
Yeah.
That's the mind.
And you want to do the best that you possibly can for them. And, there's some parts of life that kind of like keep you from being who you want to be for your children, So it's kind of, I don't know. It's odd. That's an odd question. It's like loaded because it like gives me so many different emotions to like think about.
No, but that's great because that's like, I'm asking these questions because I've now found someone that's in my life that we are in conversation about, when we want to have children and what we're going to do, leading up to that fact, just like our own lives, like our health and stuff like that before, getting pregnant, because there's certain things she wants to accomplish and vice versa before actually trying, right? So I imagine that most of, if there are the fear aspects of it, it comes from how we were brought up, right? Or how we perceived our parents.
Yes.
So I perceived my father in a certain way. I think most kids perceive their parents in a certain way when they're kids. And then when you become an adult and live in the real world, then you kind of reevaluate how you saw your parents, regardless what your situation was. And I've said it many times, like, I looked at my father as being, I didn't agree with the way he was bringing me up. There was always a confrontation there. We butted heads, and all that sort of stuff. But then I leave the house and I'm in the real world, where there's bills and responsibilities and other humans doing things that you did that annoyed your parent. And now you're talking like your parent because those people are doing those things that you used to do. So it's like you have this like worry of how your kids are perceiving you, but then you also have, okay, well, I don't want to do this the way my dad did, but I do want to do this because my dad did that.
I think growing up, like the things we take from our parents and like I got a lot of qualities as a child that kind of made me a little bit more independent of a person. Like I feel like I could do things on my own, in a lot of different circumstances, whether it be move to a new town or a new city or, get stuck in the woods. I'm confident that I would make it out there, like things like that. Gosh, it's so strange how this all makes me kind of feel like to think about like my parenting. Cause like, I don't want to say anything negative about how I was brought up, but I think it was just definitely a different time. And like discipline was taken differently. Like our feelings.
Let's not look at anything we say here today as speaking negatively about our parents.
Yeah.
Because they did the best job they could.
Exactly.
Because there is no manual of do this and this will be the outcome.
And it's just like evolved over the last 40 years. It's not.
And you turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
So whatever it was that they did that one may think as a negative.
Yeah.
Like I don't look at the way when my dad hit me as a negative. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful that it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. At a young age, I feel like I was kind of, I wouldn't say like responsible for like taking care of myself, but there was just certain things that if it was going to get done, there wasn't somebody there to always necessarily take care of it. My mother worked overnight. I would come home from school. She would already be gone. Oops, excuse me. She would already be gone to work, and my stepfather would come home in the evening, wrap it up for the night. And there was 4 of us. So, I mean, could you imagine? Now I look at this time again, this is a reevaluating your parents thing. And, I felt like he was always like wound up, like super tight, like just fucking explode any moment, kind of thing. And I get it now that I'm older, but when I was a kid, I was like, whoa, like what? It just seems so unnecessary, but I mean, I feel like I have a bit of a temper myself, but I try not to like
fly off the deep end.
Fly off. Yeah. That's like definitely a lot less.
I look at everything I say on this podcast in a very psychological way because I tend to talk a lot about my dad. Right. Yeah. I love my mom. My mom was a normal mom. Like she worked as well. She was a teacher and was always very loving, always very helpful, always did like art projects with me. And then the father was like the kind of like the brute force that like, we butted heads.
Yeah.
And I always thought the same thing. Like he would like there's got to be a different way to go about this. Like, why do you got to get angry? Why you got to blah, blah, blah. But when I look back at it now, and again, I don't know this, you'll be able to validate this. I don't know what the fear of being a father is like, meaning once you have a child, you will always be in fear of their well-being.
Yes.
I don't know that yet.
No.
When I look back at it, I can imagine, because I see the world the way it is, I can imagine now that all he was being was an overprotective father because he cared so much. And allowing your child to just go out in the world before they're 18 has to be nerve-wracking.
Yes.
We all did that when we were younger, right?
Yes,
like the whole go out and play till the lights come on at night, right? And yes, we didn't have as much media, even though all the same horrible things were happening in the world. We were more.
This wasn't in your face.
It wasn't in your face, but we were more carrot on the fishing line for the predators.
Yeah,
because we were just out there more. Far away.
No tracking devices.
Nothing.
No, I mean, my children have like tracking devices that are like a watch. You know, it's like that air tags and stuff, or they're in their backpacks. Like we know where they are all day long, pretty much, for the most part. I mean, when they're at school, that's different, but they have summer camp, they have trips. Yeah, it is. I think I agree with you there. I think it is a fear. That was how our fathers dealt with the way they were handling whatever it was that they might have been afraid of. Because again, now, whereas I don't always feel like I had the best example in my stepfather, I understand now growing up, he did the best that he could. And then I take a look at his life, his upbringing. He was the youngest of 12 children. His parents were divorced, and he grew up in an era where like children were seen and not heard. Like they probably, with that many kids, you wouldn't even notice if they all came home that day. It's like, so, I mean.
Or you'd probably be happy if some of them didn't.
Yeah.
Because then there'd be more food on the table.
Cool, I can eat tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like one of those things. It's all kind of like growth, and I would hope that my son would grow up and be like a more understanding father. It's like weird how we like kind of put these mental boundaries up from like our, people call it childhood trauma, but I don't, it is trauma to some extent. It's considered trauma, like certain things, but it's more of just like who we are, like what we're made of, you know, like I feel like I handle stressful situations pretty well because I got pretty comfortable with like traumatic situations at a very young age, you know? So it's just like, I don't know.
The hope that our children grow up to be that much better than us.
Yeah.
Right. For all the good aspects of
Yeah.
it. The hope as an individual becoming a parent is that we're able to do that little bit more than our parents were able to do for us.
Yeah.
Again, I always say, regardless of your situation, even if you grew up in a wonderful, healthy, happy household, you still want to be able to afford a bit more for your kids, right? And then for most people, starting parenthood, hopefully, not always, but you have a partner. And then there is also the aspect of how do you choose how to be a parent, because you're parenting together.
I think the most important thing that I had to learn, it didn't occur like so naturally in the beginning, because again, no one tells you. Like everyone's like, "Oh, you're having a baby. That's so great." And really like they're thinking in their head like,
good luck.
Good fucking luck with that one. But you know, I think when you are raising a child with someone else, the most important thing to remember for me, I had to learn it, and I didn't feel like necessarily my wife always communicated it to me like clearly, whereas it'd be like more in a moment of frustration. But it's important to help that person. Like if you see them, my wife makes their lunches every morning, you know, if I come in and just help with like the smallest part of that, that makes such a big difference, like in the whole like vibe in the air, the whole love. I think it's important to think of your partner a lot more than you do, because when you have children, that kind of prioritizes like over, you know, your relationship, even in the beginning a lot. It's important to like keep showing that person that you're there for them. You're here to support. Or one of the things I could have done differently was like when she was waking up in the beginning and feeding the baby, like she breastfed both children, but like I could have been there at those moments at nighttime, like awake with her, you know, that probably would have been, that's like some advice I would give to a young about to be father. And it's important to remember to be understanding and supportive, not like take offense to, you know, necessarily like the delivery of how they're asking for help. Right.
Right.
Because they don't know in those moments that
we all know that women talk and act and react on a more emotional level than men do.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
Generalization. So again, no one gives us the memo as a young person that life is going to be difficult. Yeah. Right.
It's going
to get harder as you grow up. And like you're saying, no one tells you when you're a newlywed couple or you don't even have to be married. You're just about to become a parent with somebody, and everyone just kind of nods their head. No one really takes the time to say, "Hey, listen, it's you're not going to sleep.
Yeah,
you're going to get in fights. This is what's actually going to happen. And if you want to survive it, here's what I did. Here's what I've learned on the first child. Here's what I've learned on the second child." And that's great advice. Is in life, we should always be aware of our surroundings. It'll make your life a lot easier. And if you notice that the person that you've made this commitment with, right? Because it's a full on, this is a forever deal.
It is.
You have a child,
it is.
Hopefully till long after you pass, right? That's the hope. You need to be not on eggshells, not tiptoeing around every single thing that happens, but be aware that when you're available, to be available, to be present, basically, is what you're saying.
Sometimes that's something I could have done differently when both of my children were infants.
I've learned from people talking about this conversation is that we tend to forget that the person at home is dealing with,
they're in the trenches too.
They're just as much in the shit, because I watch certain shows and I see the level of noise that a newborn. It's just nonstop crying and screaming and yelling, and you can't really do anything because there's no communication yet there.
They tend to need something, and you usually learn about how to get rid of gas in a baby like way too late.
Right. Okay.
If you have a gassy baby, that can be a nightmare like scenario. So
And
it's just
then,
like one of those things to think of.
And think of the person that's at home with the child all day or all evening is dealing with that.
They're at their wits' end.
Yeah. So when you come home,
you got to bail them out.
That's the point.
Yeah.
There's a thing I came across recently. I'm not going to remember who said it or on what platform, but it really blew me away. Relationships and or marriage are not a 50-50. They are a 70-30, an 80-20, a 60-40. They are whatever the other person isn't carrying.
Yes.
You step in and carry. And that's another thing that people don't quite understand, because fights can happen. It's like, oh, we're supposed to be do like equal. Like, no, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have 80% energy and they only have 20 because that's just where they're at.
Yeah.
And hopefully in return, when you're at like a 30, they'll do the 70.
Yeah.
And some days maybe you're both on that even plane and it's a 50-50.
Yeah.
But it really is.
Yeah. The reality of the situation is it definitely, we all have our days. I think that, we kind of also grew up in a house where one person made all the decisions too. Even
Seems
if it
like
wasn't the
like
best,
that.
My home is even with only a 5 and a 6-year-old, at least I think that we make their opinions feel heard, which I think that's important, to make your child feel heard and understood, because, if you don't have that, I think you kind of just, as the child grows, they're not going to come tell you something if you don't, if you just like shut it down, like if they're like concerned or whatever it might be, and you're like, oh, that's nothing, don't worry. But you got to hear them and understand why. So dismissing their feelings as a small person, that actually can magnify. Yeah, it can be damaging. I think so. That might be something, my mother was always good about that, but she wasn't the one that was home when we were awake, so that was just like, I don't know.
That's a very good example.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very similar household where I believe my brothers and I all feared my father.
Yeah.
That's just, again, that was the time. That was the
period
generation,
time,
right?
Yeah.
That was like my oldest brother was born in 1970 because he's 7 years older than me. I'm 77.
Mm-hmm.
Middle brother is 3 years older than I am. So 74 he was born. And that period of time, it definitely seemed like dad ruled the roost.
Yep.
Not to say mom didn't speak up when she wanted to, because that was our household. Like, mom chose to be the wife and the mother that she was, but she stood her ground if she needed to.
Yeah, if it was necessary.
And I've said this before, I've gotten smacked on the face by my mom before, and realized, oh, I fucked up.
Yeah.
But back then it seemed like, the parenting style was that way because it was how he was raised.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. I am the one that believes that a good spanking is still necessary. That's just, I was brought up that way. I will bring my children up that way. I will have a quieter home from the aspect of the yelling. I don't believe that the voices need to be raised to that point.
Until you've said it 5 times.
Okay, see?
And it's like, okay,
But then I think that is where our parent comes out of us, because we were brought up that way. And when you get pushed to a certain level, even in life,
it's hard not to react. Yeah.
Right.
It's hard not to react.
And then it's where you then have to really be present to realize, okay, I'm about to lose my shit on my 5-year-old who's not going to understand anything more than just dad's yelling at me.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Like you almost got to put yourself
thing
in.
To remember. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm kind of gathering all this information from different people, because a lot of my friends have children, and I'm now at that point in my life where I can actually see that that's going to be a possibility in my future. It is like, I literally have that conversation with my roommate, and it's interesting because now when I daydream, I'm almost like, it's going to be so much fun when I get to call my best friend and be like, yo, dude, I'm going to be a dad.
Yeah.
And then I even imagine the absolute enjoyment of fear. The first time,
new challenge.
The first time that this alien is in my hands and I'm like, fuck.
It's little. It's like holding a bag of sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they're like 5. I think my kids are both less than 6 pounds, or right around 6 pounds, which is fairly normal.
And now you're an adult.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think as much as I think I'm an adult right now at 46, I had to think about that, 46 years old. I don't think I truly understand what it's like to be an adult yet, because I'm not responsible for anyone else's feelings.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I have a girlfriend, and like, obviously your actions, reactions, but like, again, I don't have one, but like, once you have that child, that's really like, oh fuck, I gotta grow the fuck up now.
Yeah, it's like, I'm making decisions for more than just myself.
With the parenting skills and the parenting ways, you know, in a 2-parent household, you're not always around when the other parent is dealing with a situation. Is there like a conversation that you have ahead of time to be like, hey, listen, this is what we should do?
Yes. My son got a lot of energy, so he can tend to need a little bit more attention in class than some of the other students. This can get him in trouble sometimes if he's not getting the attention he needs. My wife will get an email or something about how his performance is at school, blah, blah, blah. She'll reach out to me. And depending on the nature of what it is, either one of us will speak to him about it and just let it be. Like, we both don't need to get on him about it, but we will have that discussion ahead of time. If it's something serious, then I won't even acknowledge it when I pick him up from school. We'll bring him home, wait till she comes home. And then it's kind of like, gotta get to the bottom of it, you know,
together.
Yeah. It's double team him, sit him down and like kind of explain to him like how he's making other people feel when he acts like, because kids are not cheap, and you don't want to ever tell them no, like you can't buy them a new pair of shoes or something when they need it, or
especially when they're growing
they got
up.
A hole in there. Yeah, because little kids are nasty to each other. They're really nasty. You know, funny, I won't get too far off the subject, but this kid was giving my son a hard time in camp up in Jupiter. And I was talking to my wife. I'm like, man, I wish I knew what that kid looked like. I'd like to just so I could fucking trip him if I ever saw him. Like, oh, sorry, buddy. Oh, are you okay? You know, it's just like, that's another parenting feeling. It's like, you know, protective to your parents. But my kids are in jujitsu too. So at the same time,
I was going to say, because we're not, parents nowadays aren't allowed to tell their kids to go deal with it the way we were told to deal with it. Yeah. Right. If you have a problem with someone, you go talk to them and you deal with it. Yeah. Right. That's like, God forbid you said that to your child, like, you'd be like getting a lawsuit from someone. Yeah. But putting children, regardless male or female, into some sort of self-defense program where they teach them discipline. They teach them so many great values. Yes. Like, I'm even actually looking into which arena I want to start training in. Because just like Anthony Bourdain, I think he was 52, I think, when he started jiu-jitsu.
So if you remove the fear from the situation, like if my son knows that he doesn't have to be afraid of the other kid, because if it did become a physical altercation, my son would put that kid on the ground.
But not necessarily hurt the other individual, know how to defend himself so that the other individual doesn't have the chance to hit him.
That is not what we're teaching our kids.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I told my son. So anyway, he's been in jiu-jitsu for, must have been a year, over a year now. And so he was telling me that this kid keeps putting his hands on him. And I was like, well, did you tell a camp counselor? He's like, yes. Like, well, did you try telling the kid to stop? And he's like, yes. I'm like, okay, if that doesn't work, then put him on the floor. Like, Carter, you're in jiu-jitsu. I was like, you don't have to put up with this stuff. You don't have to.
And
you're not doing anything wrong, and he will leave you alone. Just put him on the ground, though. I'm not saying like, don't
hurt him. Just
make sure he understands that that's where he's going to end up. That's all you have to do there. And that's why I like jiu-jitsu, because I think it's a great way of getting someone to submit, and it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the most violent. It's not like striking. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up in a time where that was pretty common to see people fist fighting, you know.
It was like a daily occurrence
before gun violence.
Yeah. Like, we didn't even have that in Canada.
My friends would beat each other up if there was no one else to beat up. Yeah. It's just like, that was how we grew up.
Hopefully your son also learns from class, from jiu-jitsu, is that you have the ability to stick up for the little guy.
Yeah.
So if someone that you know or someone that you don't know is getting picked on all the time because of their size or because they're not cool or whatever the situation. Yeah. You have the ability to go and stop that first with your words to the bully and say, hey, listen, I don't think you should be doing that. He's not done anything wrong to you. Just leave him alone. It's not cool.
Yeah.
And then if that person comes at you, it's you have the skill level to do one or two moves or use their body weight coming at you to just be like, yo, dude, no, we don't need to do this.
We don't need to get here.
Yeah. And as soon as you do that to an individual of whatever age, the thought process in their brain all of a sudden is like, oh fuck. I can't do that to that person. I think what we're getting at basically is parenting is difficult as fuck, just like life is.
Yep.
But there's a lot of good lessons here today on how to parent and what to expect, which I think is important because however many how-to books there are out there, they probably don't really tell you how difficult it is and what's going to happen as kids grow up. And a great little segment there on self-defense. You know, children should be in a program like that at a young age because we all don't want our kids, and we didn't want to be bullied or learn not to be the bully, you know, like have that ability to understand and knowing how to counteract those who are doing that to other children, or if your child is being treated a certain way, they should know how to defend themselves so that it stops.
The only changes that I would have made up until this point would have been inside of myself as a parent, you know?
Which you still can.
Things. Yeah, which I still can
from this point on.
I'm not always aware of myself in the moments, but like I think that, you know, I learn, you know, each mistake you make, you learn. You know, it's just nice to have friends that can give you a little insight when you're actually kind of planning on, you know, or thinking of it. And it's a pretty awesome experience.
Well, Sam, thank you very much for showing up again. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you. And again, you have an open invitation anytime you want to come sit in the chair.
I can't wait to do one in Thailand.
Oh, done. Yeah, 100%, dude. Well, we'll definitely collaborate and do something in Thailand together. I'm looking forward to that for sure. So thank you very much for coming back again. Everyone out there in the Life Choices land, thank you very much for coming by each and every week. We will see you next Tuesday here at 2 p.m. on the Life Choices podcast. Much love, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You are now about
The Journey, Life Choices podcast.